Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of A Planet Among the Stars. I am Dr. Jane, and today I'm going to be talking to you about this full moon that we just experienced. Apologies for not getting you guys kind of the warning ahead of time. I'll admit I saw this full moon coming and I just battened down the hatches because, woo, this one was a doozy. Not only was this just your normal full moon, but this full moon was conjunct with Mars, who is currently retrograde. So it was really a lot. And I'm talking to you a little bit about the themes that you can maybe do a little bit of hindsight is 2020 here. You can actually still work with this energy and still really gain a lot of clarity from what you experienced. So sometimes, I have found that especially for really intense energetic events, you just have to experience them, and then you can kind of look back and reflect and get a better understanding of what was happening and what you can learn and gain from it, and then how you can kind of use these experiences to progress forward in your lives. So as always, the full moon is a pretty intense time energetically because of what the moon represents, right? So the sun is our outer world and the moon is our inner world, and or our subconscious, right? It's everything that's right below the surface. And so during any full moon, the light of the sun is shining fully onto the moon, which is the light of the sun shining fully onto our subconscious, right? So we have the capacity to see clearly what is going on underneath the surface in our lives, and it will often bring to the surface all kinds of things that we normally kind of shove down. And so if we have this awareness of what's going on, then we can bring a higher mind to it instead of just acting out whatever it is that was being suppressed, right? But a lot of the time we don't have this awareness, or even if we do, sometimes it can be just so overwhelming. And so the thing going on with this full moon, of course, which it peaked this past Wednesday, which was the 7th. But the thing going on with this full moon, December 7th, was that it was conjunct with Mars. So Mars and the moon were occupying the same space at the same time. And this is going to sort of really amplify the energy of both of these planets together. It's going to bring their energies together. And both of them are in the sign of Gemini. And remember, we're in an ongoing Mars retrograde. And I'm not going to lie, Mars retrograde has been a huge doozy, not just for me, but for a lot of people that I have been talking to, people I know, people I don't know. It's just been a very, very powerful retrograde. And Gemini is the mutable air sign, and it is an inherently relational sign known as the twins, right? And it's a lot about our relationship with ourselves, but also our relationship between the duality of our own nature, being able to hold together light and dark in the same space, but also our relationships with other people. And so a lot of this was really illuminated with this full moon, because it's also the theme of Mars retrograde, which is also in Gemini. And I have a whole video on Mars retrograde and I just kind of re-highlight some of the main points, but really, really working with discerning between what is our true shadow and meaning what are pieces of ourselves that are not of the light and hold us back in our lives. And everybody has them. Everybody has them. No one is perfect. Nope, doesn't exist. Hermetic principle, there's good and bad in all things, right? So, but there's also a lot of pieces of ourselves that we have been taught are bad or taught are shadow, and they aren't actually necessarily. So a lot of the time, this then makes it really, really, really difficult to actually do true shadow work. Because we don't want to be friends with our shadow, our actual shadow. It's actually holding us back in our lives, and it is undesirable aspects that are not of the light. We want to bring light to it so that we can then have more power and shift those patterns so we can live the life we want to live, right? But if you can't tell the difference between what is actually a problem and what is just something you've been taught to believe is a problem, well, you can see that's just going to create a mess, right? So this Mars retrograde has been really, really focusing on discerning what is our true shadow, what is our false shadow, and really, really using relationships with ourselves and others in Gemini to show us this. And with the full moon in the same sign, conjunct, this is really like the peak of this retrograde. And aggression, anger, conflict was really, really, really accessible during this time, because remember that when a planet goes retrograde, its energy is less accessible to us externally. And so when we are deficient in that energy, it makes it more prone to expressing through the vices. And the vices of Mars are cruelty or aggression, whereas the virtues of Mars are direct action and justice, right? So when we're in this retrograde time, we're going to have to source those virtues, that virtuous Mars energy, from ourselves, and really then become strong in wielding it, while resisting kind of falling into the vice aspect of that Mars energy. And then we're going to add the full moon onto that, and anything that has been in our subconscious that we have been not wanting to put light to, that is related to the same theme, is going to come right up to the surface. And so on the one hand, this is really powerful. It's a really great opportunity to get clarity on how your relationships are showing you what you actually need to change about yourself, or what you need to come to acceptance with about yourself. So if something is not a true shadow, if it's not actually, causing harm, if it's not actually stopping your progression, and if it's not actually taking away free will, then it's not actually shadow. It's something that's been taught to you that is wrong. And there's so many things that fit into that category and are often expressed in relationships. But then there's, on the other side, there are things that all of us do that cause harm, stop our progression, or take away free will. And those are true shadows. So if we are sitting here now in the full moon, we are seeing the light come into our subconscious, illuminating all of this. And it's going to come out in the expression between relationships. So this was a really, really, really tense full moon. It was really ripe for interpersonal conflict. And so if you experienced that, then now you can kind of take a look backwards in hindsight and be like, okay, so what was this situation actually showing me? Take a little look in the mirror and see, where did this conflict with this person come from? Did it come from my shadow? Did it come from something I believe is shadow? Or did it trigger your avoidance? Is there a tough conversation you really needed to have? This full moon was going to put a lot of pressure on that and was going to show you a lot of situations in your life when maybe you needed to be able to channel the virtue of Mars and stand up for justice and stand up for yourself, but in a balanced way. And so when that energy is out of balance, either it becomes aggressive and we have conflict, or we withdraw and we don't actually engage when we need to. And so that was another kind of thing that this full moon would highlight and illuminate. And so how do you handle this kind of situation in relationships? And so you can see that there's really a lot of great fruit to be harvested from, if I put my scientist hat on, I always see everything as data, right? So what's the data here? Because we just got a lot of data on all of this energy in our lives, and we can learn from that, right? And so as the moon is now starting to wane, the moon did move into Cancer. Mercury moved into Capricorn. We may find it easier to have balanced and heart-centered communication about our feelings, right? So balanced, grounded communication, Mercury in Capricorn, heart-centered and about our feelings, moon in Cancer. To help resolve any of these situations that this full moon brought up in a way that is not kind of falling into the tense aspect of the Mars retrograde. But regardless, I just really recommend you to kind of look back at this last week and try to pick out these themes and see how it's all weaving together, and what is that intuition you're having, right? Because Neptune also just went direct, so it's going to also come into play. Relationships that are stifling our authenticity, and any aspect of our lives that is stifling our authenticity. Where are you not authentically standing up for yourself and communicating, which is a huge part of your relationship with yourself as well. So you see how it all weaves together. And we got this. We're coming out. We have one more retrograde, and then we're going to hit the middle of January. And every planet is going to be direct at the same time for the first time in over a year. And it's going to really give us the power to take everything we've learned this year and put it into action in our lives and move our lives forward. So I hope that this has helped. And I will be sending you some more videos next week because we are approaching the longest night, the sun transitioning into Capricorn, and a new moon. So lots of other stuff is happening, and I will see you then.